You know that one friend who never seems to need anything? They're fine with whatever restaurant, whatever plan, whatever seat in the car. You cancel on them last minute and they just say, no worries. You forget their birthday and they laugh it off. And somewhere in your head, a little voice goes, wow, they're just so easygoing, so low maintenance. Must be nice to be that chill. But here's the question nobody asks. What if that ease isn't ease at all? What if it's something they learned to do, on purpose, a long time ago, because the alternative felt too dangerous? Let's sit with that for a second, because it changes everything. We tend to treat low maintenance as a personality trait, like being tall or being funny, something you're just born with. But psychologists who study attachment and self-worth tell a different story. A lot of low-maintenance behavior isn't a trait at all. It's a strategy, and strategies get built for a reason. Think about a kid who grows up in a house where needs get met with a sigh, where asking for help gets you a look that says, "Why are you making this harder for me?" That kid doesn't stop having needs. Nobody stops having needs. What they do instead is learn fast that needing things costs them something: attention, patience, love, safety. So the brain, which is basically a genius at self-protection, does something clever. It starts editing the wish list before it even reaches your mouth. Why ask for what you know you won't get? Why want what makes people pull away? Easier to just not need it, or at least not seem to. This is what researchers sometimes call a hyper-independent coping style, and you can trace pieces of it all the way back to Bowlby's early work on attachment, and later to people like Kim Bartholomew who mapped out what's called the dismissive avoidant pattern, people who deactivate their own needs because activating them once led to disappointment. It's not coldness, it's armor, and armor worn long enough starts to feel like skin. Here's where it gets almost funny in a bittersweet way. Low-maintenance people often get praised constantly for the very thing that's quietly costing them. You're so easy to be around. You'd never complain. You're just so independent. Every compliment reinforces the mask a little more, like applause for a performance nobody realized was a performance. Imagine spending years perfecting the art of not needing anything, and the reward you get is people relying on you to keep not needing anything. That's not a compliment, that's a trap dressed up as one. And it shows up in the smallest places, which is honestly what makes it so sneaky. It's the person who says, "I don't really care where we eat for the 200th time," because caring once meant an argument. It's the coworker who never asks for credit because asking once got them labeled difficult. It's the partner who says, "I'm fine," while their shoulders are practically at their ears, because being fine was always safer than being seen struggling. Psychologist Susan Nolan-Hoeksema's research on emotional suppression shows something important here. Pushing feelings down doesn't make them disappear, it just makes them quieter and more expensive. The body keeps a tab.
Stress hormones don't care that you smiled through it. There's also a cultural layer worth noticing, because we don't just learn this at home, we learn it from the world. Think about how many cultures, workplaces, even entire generations have quietly worshipped the idea of self-sufficiency. Don't be a burden. Handle it yourself. Strong people don't ask for help. We built whole value systems around not needing anyone, and then we act surprised when people internalize it so deeply they forget how to reach out even when they're drowning. It's a bit like training someone their whole life to walk without ever showing pain and then admiring how gracefully they limp. But, and this is the part I really want you to hear, none of this means low-maintenance people are broken or faking or secretly miserable underneath every calm moment. Some ease really is ease. Some people genuinely have simple preferences and steady nervous systems. The point isn't to pathologize every relaxed person you know. The point is to get curious instead of assuming. Because behind a lot of "I'm easy, don't worry about me," there's a person who learned that being wanted felt safer than being needed, and being needed felt like a risk they couldn't afford. So maybe the real skill isn't becoming low maintenance. Maybe it's becoming safe enough in your relationships and in your own head that you don't have to be. Maybe it's noticing the tiny moment where you're about to say whatever's fine and asking yourself honestly, is it actually fine, or is this the old strategy talking? That question alone can start to loosen something that's been tight for years. And if you've ever been called low maintenance and felt a strange hollow pride in it, like you'd won some invisible contest of not being a bother, I want you to know that noticing that is not weakness. It's the first real step out of the armor. You're allowed to want things. You're allowed to take up a little space in someone else's day. If this made you think of yourself, or maybe someone you know who's just so easygoing, I'd love to hear it in the comments, because the more we talk about this stuff out loud, the less power it has to hide. And if you want more of these deep dives into the quiet psychology behind everyday behavior, stick around and subscribe. There's a lot more worth understanding about ourselves than we usually give ourselves credit for.